Good afternoon in New York, Eastern North America. Good morning in the middle and western parts. Good evening in Israel, Europe, and Africa. And welcome whatever time of day or night for all of you who are joining us from all corners of the world. I'm Yael Danieli, founder and executive director of the International Center for MultiGenerational Legacies of Trauma, ICMGLT for short. Thank you for joining today's webinar on Torn, New York City after October 7. We will be introducing the film that I don't need to present it because the makers are here to present. We will have the makers of the film Torn to you. So let me just introduce the moderator myself. I'm a clinical psychologist, traumatologist, victimologist, and psychohistorian. Having developed the first program to help Nazi Holocaust survivors and their children in the 1970s, I have devoted much of my career to studying, training, writing about, and preventing lifelong and multi-generational impacts of massive trauma worldwide, to ensuring victims' rights, the rights of future generations, and to reparative justice. I conceive of psychohistory as we live history in the now, not as a list of dates and events and numbers and names, but as it shapes our decisions and ways of being today. Before I present our speakers today, just to share with everyone, not that you need to, the time we live in. It's like one eye is laughing and smiling, and the other eye is crying or tearing. And it very much is the time of year where we read the prayer in Kohelet, saying, to everything there's a season and a time to every matter under the heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to rip down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to fling stones and a time to gather stones in, a time to embrace and a time to pull back, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. While in Kohelet, it's trying to organize it. We're really living today in a time that we are confronted with a challenge of holding all of them together at the same time. And the makers of this particular, of Torn, have done an amazing job of putting some of these various competing times in a film that keeps you on your toes. So let me introduce the speakers. And Nina Mogilnik is here with us, as you see. She's a New York-based writer and activist whose career spans philanthropy, New York City government, and the nonprofit world. Today, she channels her voice into supporting Jewish authors as a reviewer for the Jewish Book Council. Blending civic experience with a sharp literary eye, Nina brings, which you'll see in the film, Nina brings depth and empathy to conversations on Jewish identity, culture, and resilience, making her a vital voice in the public and cultural dialogue. We're very happy to have you. Next, we have the filmmaker and producer Nim Shapira, an award-winning filmmaker based in New York. His work has been showcased in Tribeca, Slamdance, TED, SIGGRAPH, Cannes, March the Film, and the Venice Biennale. A former MIT Open Documentary Lab and Newing Fellow, Nim explores empathy, identity, and politics through personal storytelling. His debut feature, Torn, captures New York City's post-war after October 7, provoking urgent dialogue about empathy, conflict, and the struggle for public space. I will introduce you to Julia Simon, even though she will be late in joining us. Julia is a student at Parsons School of Design in New York City, studying art history and abstract painting. For the last year and a half, she has used her art to highlight the Jewish and Israeli experience, spark discussions among her classmates, combat anti-Semitism on campus, and raise awareness for the hostages and their release. Julia's childhood friend, Omer Nutra, was murdered by Hamas on October 7, and his body is still held in Gaza among the other 19 bodies. That was the crying eye that I referred to before. Also late will join us Shani Granot-Lubaton. Shani is the CEO of the Israelis, a pro-democracy NGO, and one of the leaders of the protest to save or secure Israeli democracy. She will speak to us from Israel. Right after October 7th, she co-founded the Hostages Families Forum in New York City and led its activities. Earlier, she served as chief of staff and spokesperson of the former head of the Israeli opposition at the Labour Party and deputy director of Darkeinu movement. Darkeinu means our path, our way. A pro-democracy and pro-social justice political non-partisan organization. Nitzan Mintz, who, those of you who have seen the film, know that she and Dede, her husband, created the now iconic posters. Could not attend today's webinar, but she did share that she wrote the following piece for us, that the pressure in her chest intensified since the beginning of the war, and how her intergenerational trauma is situated in her body. She hopes, in the long run, that all of us will succeed to breathe soon. She wrote the following: "Unfortunately, I feel the intensity of life much like my mother does. I inherited the memory of a body doubling over with the pain of stabbing. An intergenerational transmission of a memory of the woman with skinny fingers who inserted a knitting needle between her legs to prick the body of a tiny fetus. Since the needle failed, my grandmother was born. We were born out of each other's resistance to death, women woven with a trembling thread of anxiety. Now, on the long sunny days of New York, the universe flashes a yellow smile at me, and all at once, just to the right of the heart, where my breasts connect, my chest collapses again against my diaphragm, like a faulty elevator. When this happens, no breathing technique or gratitude practice will do. No rational human exists in the world who can talk me out of the sensation. I'm at home and the window is open, but air does not fill the room. My neck flexes in an attempt to suck in the air, the tendons standing like the bellows of an accordion, and the thought that I might never breathe again rises into my face and floods my eyes. Beyond the pulsating blood, the only thing that exists is my husband's warm hand. A hand the width of a ship holding onto a glass mug. Fortunately, his hand is always nearby. I'm a whale spreading across the sofa, stomach rising and falling, emitting oil spills, drowning in her rough gray couch we bought soon after we moved to New York. I'm busy transforming into a wooden plank, petrifying and mineralizing. My eyes meet the eyes of my beloved, sitting at the table at the end of the room. He leaves his computer, and as if from a distance, his strong hand reaches and grabs at my sternum. He lifts the point where the bones connect as if it's a clump of hair clogging a drain. He no longer asks questions the way he did a decade ago. He used to ask why I felt this way and expected a logical explanation. Over the years, he became an expert in resuscitation, and I, as a sign of life, pull my soul out of my small body, letting it stretch out for a moment. My therapist once asked what my chest looks like on the inside. I described it as a system of tunnels. A tissue poking hollow fingers inwards, a system of openings through which anything can trickle in. I burst with fury at my inability to protect myself. I rage at the sun, at the way the world was created, at my body, at the lack of a barrier between myself and everything else. I disappear into the couch under my beloved's deepening hand. He gets tired of twisting his hand against my sternum, but I ask him to take one more turn. It will come. The tears will come. Just a little while longer. For a moment, a familiar voice expands inside of me, speaking to me from within my gut, sending a red thread from my navel. It is the voice of the promise that cannot be broken. Your life will be one of the most beautiful. Within an hour after the conclusion of the webinar, everyone will receive the recording. We have an hour and a half for the webinar, though we have been known to to have a very engaged audience who keeps us longer often. Unlike most of the webinars, at the request of our august panelists, today we will hold a roundtable discussion among the three of us, four of us, five of us at any particular time. Then we will open the floor for questions and answers. Please feel free to address your questions or comments to a specific panelist or to everyone, or to the whole panel. You can use both the chat function and the Q&A function. And at the very end, I will invite the panelists to leave us with their quotes, last words. Nina kept assuring me that everything will be absolutely okay, even in this format. So I will let her begin, and we have two of the most eloquent speakers I've met. The floor or the screen, or both the floor and the screen. The room is yours.
Thank you, Yael. Thank you for the invitation to be part of this conversation, which is what I hope it will be, a true conversation, very much including the people who have decided to join us today. I'm most interested in hearing from them. I would be the last person, Yael, to ever say everything will be okay. I mean, for the webinar. You know, it's hard to sort of just be asked to speak, but I guess what I would say, you know, what I said in the film is what I said. I stand by it, and Nim knows this. I felt very anxious about what would sort of remain in the film. And when I saw it, I thought, yes, that's who I am, and that's what I believe, and that's how I feel. So that will remain my commentary there. In this moment, I agree with you. We have the laughing eye and the crying eye. And I think I've been thinking a lot since we had our earlier conversation about this issue of empathy and how much Nim, I think, rightly frames this film as a plea for empathy, as a call for empathy, even a demand for empathy. And yet I found myself thinking what I've thought in the past, pre-October 7th, but that when it comes to Jews, often the plea for empathy is the sound of one hand clapping. And I don't know that I feel different. I think I feel that more acutely now. I feel that, and without taking away from the devastation in Gaza and the suffering of Gazan civilians and the horrors of war, I feel it's almost impossible not to feel assaulted by, from every direction, with this notion that the only way we can have an empathetic conversation is if somehow I disavow my identity, my affiliations, my family, my history, my stories. And that is not a path to empathy. That's the path to a brick wall. And I don't know how we get past it, around it, over it, through it, under it. God forbid under it, sorry. But that's sort of what I struggle with. I think what Nim did and what I was just sort of dumb lucky to be included in is an incredibly important historic record of a moment in time, and also a plea, an embedded plea. I don't know who's listening to that plea. I don't know who's actually willing to hear it. And that is what troubles and distresses me. And I'll just leave that there.
Go ahead, Nim. This should be a conversation.
Of course.
And Rabbi, maybe you can, instead of a speaker's view, you can give the view of the panel so people will have the sense of the discussion. Go ahead, Nick, please.
So I also
how did you even start? How did
So yeah, I'll answer that. I just first want to say thank you so much for having us. And I'm really, really honored to be in this webinar that was initiated by you. So thank you for this. I also want to talk about, before I dive into how I made the film, I want to talk about the laughing eye and the crying eye that you started with. And I think that what I try to do in the film, and I don't know if I was very vocal about it before I started working on the film, but I think every time I speak now, I have to mention it. I think it's not a laughing eye and a crying eye. I think that there are so many chambers in our heart with different emotions. I think that, you talk about the emotions wheel. So it's not the inner circle of the emotions wheel, it's the external circle of the emotion wheel, because there are so many different emotions right now. Some of them are shock also. So maybe the eye doesn't even know how to process the information. Exactly. And yeah, I think that that when we saw the hostages come out on 2 days ago, or was it? Time flies. Yeah, it was the first time I think that I allowed myself to be happy after 2 years. I think that a lot of Israelis and a lot of Palestinians and a lot of people abroad, New Yorkers, have felt relief, or they had a moment to, to understand for just 1 second, that it's a new chapter. It doesn't mean that the war is over. There are still a lot of checks and balances that need to happen on both sides. But it is a moment that we can take a second. I'll also say that, I talk about empathy a lot, and when we talk about the different definitions of sympathy and empathy and compassion, empathy is unique because, and I'm no doctor, but empathy is unique because we are trying to put ourselves in others' shoes. And I always say that, and then I follow up with, we can never put ourselves in someone else's shoes because we don't know what the other person is going through. So we can only, step out of our own shoes for a quick second, or a 75-minute film, and try and understand, the other. But I am going to talk about a hostage released after 2 years. They do not understand what is happening. Like, they see the light of day and they are blinded, like they are coming out of Plato's cave, right? They don't understand what is happening. And we've seen videos of them, footage of them meeting their younger siblings. And for a few seconds, they don't recognize that younger sibling, because 2 years have gone by and the younger sibling is much more mature. And that's kind of like, I would say, the first time for them to understand the passage of time, after they've been kept in a cage, shackled in the underground. So, and then I'm gonna go talk about the film in 1 second, but I also want to talk, and I would love to throw the mic.
May I even add to to your description? How about a father who didn't see his daughters for 2 years? When he left, they were babies. Now they're little people, and the other way around.
Correct. The other way around, they don't even recognize. They don't recognize the father, and they need to bond again because the father was kidnapped when they were a baby, with no memories. I also wanted to talk to you specifically, doctor, because I talk about it a lot, but I don't. We talk amongst ourselves. We say a lot, and this is true, I think, for all of New Yorkers that have been immersed in this. And it's also true for Israelis and Palestinians alike. The passage between trauma and post-trauma, like, where are we on the timeline, if you can even define it?
We are nowhere near post. And as you know, our center is multi-generational. And so part of what we have learned, I have learned all these years, some of you, for example, know this book that covers 30 populations around the world, which I published in 1998 to sort of teach the world that trauma just doesn't just get resolved. Liberation doesn't happen when the concentration camps gates or whatever they call you call them are open, etc., etc. We are not just talking about Jewish experience, even though this is the focus, our focus today. But we very much welcome the audience to contribute. Any other, please, because you know that the center exists to bring everyone together, not to keep us apart. So
may I add something?
You may ask anything.
No, I just wanted to add something, which is, and I think my sister is on the Zoom. So, you know, we're the children of a Holocaust survivor father. And I was always struck by two things. Well, more than two things, but two that I'll mention here. One is dreams.
Oh, good.
When he used to talk about his dreams. And the other is the losses that he never stopped talking about, particularly his whole family, but his nephews, his two very young nephews. And I say that because I think trauma, I think there are a couple of other things that I would mention. One is no matter how much my father shared his stories, and I think it was hugely important, it was kind of our legacy, there was always going to be that gap. And I wrote about that when I wrote my college thesis about the gap that language goes just so far. But to Nim's point earlier, you cannot get inside someone else's experience. So much as he was my father and my closest parent, there was always going to be this gap between us.
Sounds like it should become part of our. Sounds like it should become part of our library.
Right, but I also firmly believe, and this has been borne out, but I always believed it, that trauma, that intergenerational trauma, is literally written in your DNA. And
we actually have scientific proof of that.
Right, yes, no, that's what and so I think this idea of post-trauma is almost a trap. I think it's a matter of how do you live with trauma, with the legacy of trauma, rather than a post-trauma kind of expectation. So I'll just leave it there.
You see, I often, when I give lectures, I say that children of survivors are trained psychotherapists by the age of 3. They just wait for the title and the license. And here is an example. So, and both of you actually speak of empathy with such understanding. I wish many more of my colleagues spoke this way. So, or they can simply learn from you. This is superb. Shani is joining us. Rabbi?
I sent the link over to her. Yep.
Okay.
So maybe if it's okay, Doctor, in the meantime, I can talk about the first question that you asked me, and I dodged it. So I'm going to talk about the conception of the film. And as the doctor mentioned earlier, the film link is available for the center, so you can watch it after the discussion. As I'm talking, it would be amazing if people can also write if they watch the film and where they are from in the world, because that would really help the discussion kind of like expand. So that would be my ask from you. I've been a New Yorker for the past 13 years. And when October 7, I was by chance in Israel. You know, every person has their, where were you on 9/11? Where were you when JFK was assassinated? Or where were you when Rabin was assassinated? And and yeah, like that day, you know, we ran to the shelters, not or to the safe rooms. Some ran to the staircase because they don't have that in their home or apartment house. And I remember the shock on my face when I heard about 50 people murdered in a party. That was the number on screen, and I remember a rumor that the number is much higher because rumors travel very fast in Israel. People can't keep their mouth shut, and I just saw the death toll rise up and rise up, and then the understanding that there are also hostages. And when I went to Yom Kippur, to the synagogue, I attend the Yom Kippur prayers. That's the only time I attend the synagogue every year. They read a prayer that is 1,000 years old about please God, help us bring back the hostages safe home. And I thought to myself how you know, I don't have the vocabulary to say that, how sad it is that there's a 1,000-year-old prayer in Judaism to bring back our hostages. So talking about kind of like our shared DNA, the fact that hostage taking is something that we know as a people. And I would say that that, you know, right from the start, as Shani, who will join us in a second, you know, has always taken initiative. I also wanted to take initiative. I saw that, you know, the old saying of "you are the people you've been waiting for," and I wanted, and I tried to do what I do best, which is to help hostage families. It was before the hostage family headquarters existed, right? So we're talking about the first days of October 7. So what I did was connect to several families who I know that had their loved ones missing. They didn't know if they were murdered or kidnapped. And I tried to help them create videos. After I did that, I noticed that we are speaking in this echo chamber. And basically no one is seeing our videos outside of our own community, at least from the statistics that I was exposed to. And that gave me kind of like the idea for the film. This, and in parallel, also seeing that on the other side of the world, again, I'm in Israel on the first few weeks after October 7, seeing that there's a silver lining, right? People on the other side of the world care about what has happened. People are putting up the kidnapped signs. And then very soon after, I see people rip down the signs. And, you know, on social media, you couldn't really ignore it. Like every, you know, you doom scroll just to see what's happening. And every third video, you see someone ripping down the posters. And I know Brooklyn and Manhattan like the back of my hand. So I know, okay, this is where I go to work, and this is where I eat, and this is where I go to the cinema, and this is this, and this is that. So I was pretty shocked that this was happening. And the movie started out as wanting to talk about what happened to Dede and Nitzan, the artists, because, you know, they have gotten death threats and they had to move 10 different times because people found out where they lived. Back in when they started, they were blamed that the posters are a government initiative, even though it's, you know, they stopped working and did the postering for around 6 or 9 months. Right. But very quickly after, it was clear that the story is not about Dede and Nitzan. They kind of like ignited it. The story is about how these posters hit New York and how the ripples of the tearing down of the posters kind of like divided, split the community. I always say that not only the posters were torn, but also the social fabric of the city, and also other liberal cities or Western cities around the world. And and yeah, and when I did the film, you know, I have to say that when you make a film, it's very hard to know how it will end, especially when there's a war going on, right? There's a war going on, and you also don't know, you know, when the war will end, if the hostages will be out. So it's kind of like driving 200 miles per hour and you don't know the destination. But I have to say that, and I'm gonna throw the mic to Shani. I have to say that, like, watching Shani's spearheading the fight to bring them home on the New York front is something that, for me, I was in awe of her, and that is why it's also echoed in the film, because there's the individuals that are putting up the posters, but also there's this huge umbrella, and someone is holding that umbrella, and that umbrella holder is Shani. So I'm gonna give the mic to Shani now, and Shani is in the film for a quick second, but her DNA is throughout the film.
Yeah, and at the residence of the UN Secretary General. Hi, Shani. Please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm not sure how stable the internet here is, so just tell me, can you hear me? Can you watch?
Yes,
can you
yes,
see me?
yes.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm on a trip with my 4-year-old and my 6-month-old, so I'm doing the best I can. So I think, to refer to what Neem just said, I think the community in New York felt like everyone wanted to do something, and we tried to create this kind of different platforms and different calls for actions that people can join into. So there were the posters, and there were stickers, and there were the demonstrations in front of the UN Secretary General, and there were the demonstrations and the marches in Central Park, and there were Friday gatherings in different places, and there were more kind of artistic stuff that we did to kind of shake people up, and we tried to find a way for different people to find their path, to their way to express their solidarity with the families and their pain. We had singing nights that we all sang sad songs together. Sorry, wait, I'll move. So one thing that our community suggested for people to join in, and I think it was so strong for people in our area and in New York, because it was something so easy. Everyone with a printer could have printed and take it and do it, go outside and do it. We had groups that went together. We had WhatsApp groups of Israelis and Americans that went together to do it, because there was something even a little bit scary to do it by yourself. But there were also people that were very kind of motivated to do it by themselves. And as you can see in the movie, you can see that there are kind of both kinds. And I felt like the posters, I think, as Neem said, there were this act of hope and pain, and the fact that people ripped them off was just like Neem said, ripping the social fabric of the different neighborhoods and the communities, because people felt like they were Jews or Israelis, but they were also very strong New Yorkers and very strong, I don't know, Upper East Siders, and the fact that in their own neighborhood people ripped the posters that they've put on, it was shocking and heartbreaking for so many people, that this action became even more important to them. Like it was like, we are not, we will not give up on our voice. We will not give up on our neighborhood, on our presence. And we want to put our pain out there for people to see and to hear and not to forget. It was a very, very strong calling. And I mean, we had hundreds and thousands of people that came to the demonstrations, but I think even more people who put a sticker or a poster throughout the 2 years. Like everyone did it at least once. It was just like this thing that everybody could do. Yeah, I think that's my take. If anybody wants to ask a question, I'll be happy to answer.
Sure.
I want to ask you a question, actually, Shani. You know, you talk a lot about what you did, but I want to know how you felt. And first, I'll tell you how I felt. And Nina, we know how she felt because it's in the film. But Nina, you can also add that later on. But I, as an Israeli American, feel that a lot of the struggles that I join don't get their don't succeed. Let's just say that. I think that in recent years, what we've seen, again, 13 years ago when I was living in Israel, there was I'm not even talking about the Peace Now protest because that's another thing, but even a protest to lower the cost of living, or a protest to I don't remember, but like there were so many different protests. So or to stop the judicial overhaul.
I lost
right?
so many times.
She ran New York before October.
I know, and we collaborated. Back then. That's how I know her. My question is, every time I show the film, and I show the film over 100 times across. I screened it in front of Muslims and Jews and Christians and Mormons, and I've screened it in front of college students. Some were in encampments, and in front of seniors. But we've talked about how towards the end of the film, Dede and Nitzan are saying, they got to the Pope, they got to Donald Trump holding the kidnap sign, they got to Netanyahu having it in his pocket. But in the end of the day, they didn't do what the people asked them to do, right? And I think,
which is to bring everyone home.
To bring everyone home as soon as possible through a diplomatic deal. That was kind of like the plea of the people. So
the aim, right?
The aim, yeah. And I was personally, again, from my experience as an activist, pretty shattered by it because you have so many people coming out. We are, again, as the doctor said, in trauma. You're right. We haven't moved on to post-trauma. And are we fighting for ourselves? Are we fighting for them? Are we fighting for both ourselves and them? So yeah, I would love you
and for the Jewish people.
Yeah, and I would love
and for living in peace in the world.
Yes, and I would love Shani to just answer that because she's really leading thousands of people. So I just want to understand from her what she felt, and then I can talk about the film.
So I can start with my answer about the judicial reform, the judicial overhaul that my government tried to do, still trying. When this has happened, I just moved to New York 4 months before that with my husband for his studies. And I knew literally 3 people in the city that all lived in Brooklyn. I had no friend in Manhattan. And I I got this photo of my 75 years old mom back then, standing in the pouring rain, in the protest against the first protest against the judicial overhaul, and I started crying, and I told my husband, like, what am I doing here? I have to go back. Like, how can we be here when this is what's happening? And he was like, you're crazy. We're not going back now to protest. Like, I'm in the middle of my dream, my Columbia studies. And I remember I just had to do something. So I started the protest movement in New York because going to a shrink was way more expensive in New York City. And I was like, okay, I'll just do something. And it was 100% for me. I had no thought that I can be in any way productive or helping the fight for real. I mean, of course I was wrong, and by the time, I mean, I learned how important it was for the struggle that we had this front in the outside of Israel front, and that wherever the government members went to, we were there to remind them that the Israeli people will not live in a undemocratic country, and so on and so on. But I feel like the seed started from a very, very egocentral feeling and need to do something. I didn't think that I could help that much. So that was 1 year before October 7th, a little bit less than 1 year before. And on September 22nd, my Prime Minister Netanyahu spoke at the UN. And that was like the peak of our protest movement. There were 10,000 people outside the UN, Nobel Prize winners and the most popular rabbis on stage speaking against the judicial coup. And 2 weeks after was the October 7th. So, I mean, we were at the peak, and then October 7th came, and I already knew that I can motivate people, that I can change something, that I can help my people. I had this in my mind because I felt it just a few weeks before that. And it was Friday 11:30 at night in New York when it was Saturday 6:29 in the morning in Israel, and my family didn't wake up yet. Like, I knew there was war going on in Israel before them. And what I did was I called one of my friends that night and I told them I need help to have a fundraising site. So when all the Americans wake up at Saturday morning, they'll do what they know best. They'll donate money. That's what American Jews, that's what they love to do. So let's have a site to take the money and to give it to people who need it, because I knew, I mean, God help me, the UJA are doing amazing things, but American funds move way, way, way slower than Israelis. And I knew that if I will have money, I can give it very, very fast to the people who needs it. So this is how it all started. And so at that night, we already built the site. And in the morning, we had the possibility to help people and to buy clothes and food for people who had nothing. And it all happened so fast. So I feel like, to your question, Neem, it's a kind of, I don't know, weird cycle where I do something for myself. That's the first seed, definitely. It's not like an altruistic thing that I know I can know, but within it, I already, like, the energy starts, and it starts within me, but it helps. I felt like so many people reached out to me when October 7th started and asked me how we can help, what we can do. That, I mean, people already kind of counted on me. They've asked me what to do. So I had to give answers. And it really, I think, saved me. This was the hardest year of my life, like so many others, but it saved me. And when we left and we had our goodbye party, so many people came to say thank you for helping them survive this awful year. When people are enduring they feel like they have a meaning and they can walk through this nightmare. So I think it was for me, but it helped, I guess, our community to survive.
So we know actually that when you do it for you, it's authentic and it more easily includes others. But you had your husband's cousin was also a hostage, as I
Right.
recall, and so it was really very personal, not just Shanice, even though you have become to be an icon yourself. But how did you connect?
We didn't know that.
Wait, Shani, how did you connect with Nina and Dede?
So first of all,
sorry, Nina,
I'll say that.
Do you remember?
So first of all, I'll say that we didn't know at the beginning. Yes, I remember, but I do want to say that at the beginning we didn't know that Omar's cousin and 3 children were taken hostage, and we actually thought they were all murdered. Because the father and the oldest daughter were murdered, but the mother and the 3 children were taken hostage. They're from Kfar Aza, Goldstein Almog family. I guess most of the people know Chen and Agam. So that was family, Omar's family. And when we found out, of course, everything became even more personal and close. Nitzan reached out to me. I don't remember the exact date, but it was a few days after October 7th. And she told me, hey, we have this initiative, me and my boyfriend, or me and my husband, I don't remember. Anyways, she told me that they want to have posters. And she asked me if I can share it on all my WhatsApp groups. We had WhatsApp groups with thousands of Israelis and American Jews from the protest movement. And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? It was very, very, I mean, for a minute there, I didn't think like it's gonna be that big. I was just like, yeah, that's a good idea. Come on, I'll share it. Of course, I'll help. But there was nothing. I mean, I can't say I thought that it's gonna be this big. And I mean, I remember friends from Israel asking me to send them the posters because they wanted to put the posters in Israel.
Exactly.
So, I mean, the artists from New York created posters and also people in Israel printed them and put them on. It was really like, I was like, you need us for this? But yeah, I mean, it really literally went to everybody.
Yeah, and I will add also that Shani, when Shani is so well connected and networked, and of course she had her relatives kidnapped as well. When Dede and Nitzan created it, they didn't know personally people that were kidnapped. So they followed the news. Some people said, we've seen a video on TikTok of our family taken hostage. So that's how they took the photo from Israeli websites. And, you know, it was kind of like very rogue and unofficial. And for a few, I think a week or two, they were, I would say, if you're not within the, I don't know, IDF headquarters and you're just an Israeli civilian, they were the database of who's been taken hostage, right? Like they've been getting complaints from people whose loved one has been kidnapped. Why isn't my loved one in your database? And they were like, we're just 2 artists. We will add them, but it's not, we didn't do this on purpose. So when
this is very important also for our audience, because as you see, some are from Georgia or Croatia or Rwanda or Nigeria. So this could be a fantastic lesson to many people around the world about what can be effective and how much to hope from it.
Yeah, right. May I add something?
Please, absolutely.
Okay.
I was hoping
First of all,
you would.
Shani, it's good to see you, not outside the UN Secretary General's home or in Central Park. So lovely to see you. And congratulations on the second.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
It's interesting.
you.
So much of what Shani said reminded me of something that I actually have come to believe about myself and have heard from family, which is I'm more Israeli than I am American. I'm not good at sitting still. I also don't believe, I joined protests in America in the past, but gave up because they've always been hijacked by someone else's agenda. So I don't have a lot of confidence in that, but I actually was at the pro-democracy protests. So I pivoted with all the Israelis to the hostage issue. And, you know, to Shani's point, we have to do something, we have to do something. And so I reached out, it was Brothers in Arms, Shani, right? That was doing a lot of the work in Israel. So we decided we can be quicker than UJA. And we checked in with family to make sure what they were doing was credible. And we gave as much support as we possibly could, more than we'd ever done in the past, to make sure people had food and clothing and whatever they needed that people on the ground were saying. And I joined the Central Park runs and protests, and I joined you at the Secretary General's house and put up posters and all of this and all that on my own. Actually, I'm not good at joining because I often join and then I'm disappointed by how things go. So I figured I'll just do it on my own. So I had no hesitation about doing that. But a funny thing happened when I saw the film again, and I saw you, Shani, outside the Secretary General's house, asking him for help, and he asked for the microphone, and he gave that self-serving, you know, sort of little speech. I really wanted to jump through the screen and strangle him. You had been so passionate and so respectful and so gracious, and he was just a zero. He was a do-nothing and a coward. And I thought, God bless you for having that patience. I'm not sure I could have done what you did, but you did something really, really powerful and meaningful. And you deserve enormous, you know, credit for that. And I can't imagine the toll it took on you emotionally. I mean, I reacted personally as well. Such an interesting framing. It was the same thing. It's like, I don't really care what anybody else is doing. I'll just sort of do what, you know, seems to be the right thing, and found out about the posters and had my husband copy like 1,000 of them in his office. And I just wound up putting them up. Which was not heroic. It was just, I'm not good at sitting still. My husband tells me I vibrate when I sit still. So I need to like do something. And I think that was kind of the long and short of it. But for, you know, Israelis like your family, Shani, who had family members who were directly affected, I can't even begin to imagine the toll, but I can imagine that doing something felt like just a necessity. There was no alternative. And but I do think you deserve enormous credit for what you did both before October 7th and certainly every day since. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
And I'd love to hear from the audience also if we have time for questions. So
Thank you, Nina.
Thank you, Nina. You spoke for all of us.
And I will just add for the people that didn't watch the film yet, that the scene they're talking about is when Shani had a protest outside Antonio Guterres' house, the UN Secretary General, and when she's asking for his help,
outside his residence. When
yes, correct.
Last Friday to go to work.
Correct.
Yeah, go ahead.
And he's saying that he respects he respects the people's pain. So I'm thinking, like, when you are talking to someone that experiences pain, I don't think the word is respect, right? I think that he could find other words in his vocabulary to talk about it. But the film, and I do want to, if that's okay, Doctor, to talk a little bit about my emotions and also hear about Nina and Shani's emotions. And we'll have Julia sign on in a few minutes, I think.
Oh, good. I hope so, because it's already the time she said she'll join us.
So in terms of my emotions, you know, the film, I don't mean it in a condescending way, but I would say that I am, as the filmmaker, I'm represented, or my pain is represented by, or my thoughts are represented by the 10 different interviewees. Like, I see myself in each and every one of them. So I see myself in Nina, I see myself in the others. I have 10 different interviewees. They are religious and secular, Ashkenazi and Sephardic, men and women, young and old, and they have skin in the game and they don't have skin in the game. Some of them, you know, their cousins were kidnapped, and some of them just heard about it on the news. And the reason why I wanted to make the film, again, seeing the both online fights, you know, I had friends and colleagues of mine say that the hostages are actors or the hostages are AI, and these are people that I worked with in the past. These are people I helped with when they did their artistic work. They are people from, you know, I can't really define them. I can just say that they are artists. And they are from everywhere. They are from Belarusia, from Morocco, from the United States, from the Netherlands, saying the Israelis deserved it. So, you know, that's why the film focuses on the first 3 months. And some people told me, you know, Nim, you know, you're pretty happy because the film achieved the goal and now we don't need to advocate for the hostages. And I always reply, like, the film is not about, you know, the film, maybe a byproduct of the film is advocating for the fact that there are still, as we speak right now, 19 hostage bodies in Gaza held by Hamas. But the film was never about the kidnap posters movement. It was about the rapture in New York, and it was about freedom of speech in America, and it was about how people process trauma. And can we have disagreements without dehumanizations? Can multiple things be true at the same time? And why is empathy a limited resource? So let's say a few weeks before I worked on the film, or maybe when I was working on the film, which was like 9 months, give or take, you know, I'm going on my Instagram and I want to just see what's happening. And I follow this vegan blogger and I want to see what she's cooking. And she's talking about the war, right? And I just want to disconnect. And then I go to buy Diet Coke in the bodega. And all of the streets are filled with posters that some of them are violent. Some of them are violent and are very triggering for me. So I lived in this cognitive dissonance. And that is, I would say, the reason why I wanted to create the film, because I had so much confusion in my head and I found my voice, I think, through the different interviewees. And there's the saying of, Shani will jump back because her internet is unstable. So she's trying to find another spot. Okay. I will say that, you know, when I made the film, there's a saying that goes back to Greek mythology of like, you can never step into the same river twice because you're not the same river. You're not the same person and it's not the same river. Right. And I think that every time I watch the film, you know, reality changes, the news changes, the number of hostages status changes, the death toll on the Palestinian side changes. We see more images from Israel and from Gaza that are horrible for, you know, we didn't even touch it, but I also want to say that the film, one of the things that I wanted to do when I first sat down and worked on the film is, after the first few weeks after October 7, most of us were so, we were so much, let's say, exposed to horrific images. Like if you even go now 2 or 3 weeks back to the Charlie Kirk assassination, it took hours to remove the very graphic image of him being assassinated in a close-up shot. And this is not going to be a discussion about social media responsibility, but there has been so many horrible graphic images that are seared into my brain, both of what happened to families, including babies, on October 7, both from Israeli airstrikes inside Gaza. And what I knew from the start is I don't want to show that on the film. There are so many important films about the war and films that are being made right now. I want to focus on words about coexistence or the lack of coexistence. So I'm showing a minute from October 7 and a minute from what's happening in Gaza. And I'm trying to be very careful in what I'm showing. Like, I am showing suffering, but I'm not showing the most graphic things imaginable, because how do I, as a filmmaker, how do I not alienate you as the viewer? It's hard. Like, watching the film is hard enough. Watching the film and the reactions, right? I'm zigzagging between people that are, we see how tribal New York has become. And so zigzagging between the perspectives is hard enough for the viewer. And yeah, I wanted to ask you, the doctor, and also Nina. Nina lives in North Manhattan, so I'm sure she's been exposed to things even from Columbia universities that me in Brooklyn, I see other things. So
and Omer and Shani also lived on the west side. I live on the Upper East Side, so it's different. Before, Nina, can we wait just 1 second, because one of the questioners from the audience, Judy Ronay, would you please I relate the question. Judy is also a child of Holocaust survivors, Nina. So, Judy, please go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. So I had written in, first of all, thank you so much. It's so heartwarming to see young people, because compared to me, you are all young people. Taking up the cause. I mean, not just the Israeli cause, but speaking about being second generation of Holocaust survivors, and being proactive. I mean, that's the main thing, and creative. So I wrote that. Also, the fact that here in our little town of Monroe, New York, which is affiliated with Kiryas Yoel, the ultra-Orthodox, who are not very pro-Israel, but there are several congregations here, Reform and Conservative, and Chabad, and we were all rallying every Sunday since for 2 years with our posters and our flags. We got some flack, a lot of accusations of being everything that you've heard before, baby killers, and I won't go into it. But it did feel like being proactive is the most important thing to do. What was my question? My question was, I was also part of the New York City scene, living just an hour from there, and there's a blogger, Shira Dicker, who went around Columbia University, interviewing the students, the pro-Palestinian students. So I also had an in with that, and looking at the posters and seeing the posters torn down and photographing them, because I'm a photographer, an artist also. What was the reaction, basically? What's been the reaction to your film, to your very powerful film, by the non-Jewish community since it's come out? Because you said, Nim, that people have been accusing you of, well, accusations of denial, of course, and saying that that the hostages were AI generated. I mean, that's a little bit mind blowing. But what was the reaction now of the, the
Yeah,
strength and
Of the
resolve that you've been showing?
you mean of the non-Jewish audience?
Yeah, the
yeah.
non-Jewish audience, because
Thank you.
I've gotten into with the Jewish audience. Oh my goodness, it's mind blowing how some of the second generation people are still anti-Israel and pro-Palestinian, as much as they are defending that. That was probably for me the most heartbreaking of all. I mean, of dealing with the deniers is actually having the second generation people that I grew up with saying, no, 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 no. It is Israel's fault.
I think that, so I would say that, you know, it's very, very hard for me to like start a conversation with someone who's extremely on the other side, and I don't expect them to watch the film or be interested in the film because I'll give you an example. When I showed the film to just Jewish students at the new school, the Student Justice for Palestine group labeled the film as pro-genocidal, even though they haven't watched the film. So, so I don't think they will watch the film. I hope they will, but I don't think they will. I also want to say and acknowledge that, a lot of people commend me for the film being neutral. And I always say that there is no such thing as neutral. I am biased because I am an Israeli-American Jew who's on the very left wing of Israeli politics, but I'm Israeli, and I know that my grandparents came to Israel because no other place in the world accepted them. And the gates of every European and American country were closed. So that is something like when we are talking about the binary of things and how binary everything has become, that's kind of like what I tried to talk about in the film. And yesterday I read an article that talks about how the talking points of the Israeli POV right now, or the Jewish POV right now, or the Hasbara POV right now, is to say that there is nuance, right? If someone says there is nuance, don't listen to them. These are talking points by the Israeli government. So I need to understand even how to respond to that. But I will say that when I showed the film to kids in Stanford, and they were all non-Jews, it was a special event organized by Jewish students that brought only non-Jewish students, and we had a conversation after. They were very, very, I would say the word pleased to see that they agreed with a lot of the things in the film, and I know because they snapped their fingers when they saw something that they saw themselves in it, right? So when Alana is standing in front of the in front of the White House lawn, and
Right.
she's talking about you can have empathy for her family, but also for Palestinian families. I think like a light bulb turned on in their head, above their head. So when we are talking about the ripples, it's also always important to say, like, yes, like I stopped speaking to friends stopped speaking with me, I've been called names, but I always say, like, I am not the victim here. The victims are the people that have been in a war zone for the past 2 years. but also there are so many ripples. Hi, Julia. And
Hi,
that's a
Julia.
perfect cue for Julia, because I would say there are so many ripples of how this war is experienced. And I heard about, ultra-Orthodox kids that are spat on a daily basis. They don't know where Israel is on the map, and I don't think they even follow the news. But when they walk on the streets of New York or Australia, and they have a kippah on their heads, they're a target, and they are complicit in the war. And the same goes for, I think I'm twice Julia's age, so I would say when I showed the film in the new school, for example, there was a student that said, and when I showed, again, Julia, a participant asked us about showing the film to non-Jews. So yeah, we've had screened the film in front of a mixed audience of people, like at Harvard University. We've screened it in front of people from, of course, Jews, but also Venezuela and China and Egypt, for example. And when I screened it in the theater in New York, there were Muslims that came to watch the film, and I had a really great discussion with them afterwards. Some of the most aggressive reactions I got from, I don't know if aggressive, but angry, were from Jewish audiences, because I think they see themselves in the film, so they want to agree with everything that is in the film. And sometimes I challenge their perspective. Or if the film is too left, they're angry because they are on the right. If the film is too right, they are angry because they are on the left. So I got a lot of pushback on that. But I think when I showed it, like, there is a critique that I really, really admire, and I can drop it in the chat if you want, by a film critic who's not Jewish, not Muslim, and he appreciated the nuance in the film. And he's a very high up figure in the documentary world. And I really appreciated his critique, because he talked about the film as, he appreciated the film is about Jewish pain. Like, I don't hide that the film is about Jewish pain. And I always said in every screening I had that if I want my pain to be seen, I need to also extend the empathy to others, because we don't have to agree with everything with the narrative on the other side, but we have to listen. That's the beginning for a dialogue. So I'm just going to throw the mic to Julia, but I will say that when we screened the film in Julia's new school, and we had 2 security guards outside of the classroom. That never happened in screenings that I've had. We never had a double set of security. We always have the security up front, but this time we also had 2 security guards outside of the classroom, protecting 20 students from watching a film. When I screened it, and I talk about empathy for the other, someone, I don't know if Julia knows her name or not, she said, I don't have empathy to give because I'm still so much hurting from how I've been treated by my fellow students, Jewish students that are ostracized just because of who they are, not because of any political identity. They don't walk with IDF shirts in college. They're just Jewish. So Julia, I would love for you to talk about your experience, if that's okay, Doctor, as a student now graduate, and also if you can say a few things about Omer, because Hamas claims that they cannot find
His
body as of now.
Right. You're muted, Julia.
Yeah, I needed to find the button for a second,
Yeah,
but
and if you can stand still while you speak, please. Thank
I'll
you.
try my best. I'm in the middle of work.
I know you
Uh,
are, but it's distracting, and I want the audience to hear everything you have to say.
Oh, well, thank you. I'll stand here for a minute in front of this great door. But yeah, hi guys. Sorry,
See,
I'm a little out of breath.
for the audience. This is also New York.
Yeah,
Go
I'm
ahead.
waving to the people on the sidewalk as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I will say I'm very happy I graduated and that's over. I'm trying to think. There's so much that happened at school in the last 2 years that I don't know. I feel like the story about us showing the film was just so on brand and one of the more minor things that happened. It's just the new normal now that I feel like things that we would share with adults or non-students, to you guys, everyone freaks out about it, and to us, it's very hard to actually pull apart like what is so wrong about it at this point, if that makes sense. I feel like all of the Jewish students have just been like brainwashed that this is the new normal of how life is, and the minor incidents of anti-Semitism or anti-Zionism, whatever they want to call it, to us, we're like, oh, thank God that's just it, you know? Thank God they're not physically assaulting us or spitting on us or, you know, saying horrendous things. They're just, you know, they're only doing this, or we only have 2 security guards instead of 3, or that's kind of the mindset now, which is really sad. I don't know. It's even the most minor things. I tell this story that I was making a painting for my senior thesis to kind of sum up, I guess, my experience with Omer and being at school the last 2 years. And in the summary and in the artist statement, I said, you know, I lost a loved one to terrorism. And that was as specific as I got. And my professor told me that it was too controversial and that a lot of Jewish students and Jewish people think it was a valid form of resistance. And like, no matter how you show your Judaism or your support, it's wrong. And it's too intense and it's too, you know, you're asking for harm and you're asking for, I don't know, just bad things to happen just by being you. There's really no solution to it. And now that I work in the colleges, I work for Hillel. So I'm kind of seeing the other side and getting to know faculty. And even from the administrative side, I asked them, I was like, there's been such an increase in reports of anti-Semitism compared to Islamophobia on campus. Is there any training for teachers to handle anti-Semitism in the classroom? And they're like, nothing has been brought up. The teachers just have no tools whatsoever to handle this. They're all trying their best, and some of them aren't even trying their best because they agree with the students. So it's just a really terrible environment to be in. Also working with students, there's so many freshmen who are terrified to go to college because they've heard all of these stories and they're signing up for 4 years of that I don't know. I don't know if I have words to, I wish I could put you guys in my brain and you could see all the memories, but I don't know if I have words to describe it. It's like, it's become just unimaginable over there. And then I guess in regards to Omer, his body is still in Gaza. We don't know anything, if they know where he is and they're waiting for him to come home or not. I don't know. This week was really terrible for a lot of me and my friends. And I'm sure like the families of the hostages who haven't come back. I know we had a bunch of wins with all of the living hostages and the bodies that were returned. I think for the people who, at least me and my friends were saying, like, we're so happy that those families were united and people came back. When it's your person, it hits harder. And I think the worst part about this week was we kind of allowed ourselves to have hope again for the first time in 2 years. When you keep your expectations low, you're still disappointed, but you can't, I don't know. You're still disappointed, but you're not surprised. I think for the first time we let ourselves like exhale and be like, okay, it's over. Do I have enough money to fly to Israel for the funeral? Who am I going to stay with? And starting to imagine what would be your first steps when he did come home, and imagining what the first few weeks would look like at the end of all of this, just to have the rug pulled out from under us and be like, actually, no, that was just a fantasy. That's not actually happening. I think that made the emotions a lot worse this week than it has been in about 2 years. But, you know, we're, like I said before, we're just kind of going back to normal, which is going to the schools. So nothing has really changed in regards to Omer's status and how we're feeling, but it's the new normal the last 2 years. So just grateful that nothing got worse.
This is a very important and insightful observation, Julia, actually. Even though it's in the middle of New York Street, I guess that's how New Yorkers function. So I want to, first of all, just for your information, just in case you don't know it, ADL has amazing teaching materials for teachers and for Hillel. And if you're not in touch with them, the center is, so please be in touch with me and I will
Thank
share
you.
with you, because these materials that you're asking for do exist. They just don't.
Well, I know it was proposed to the administration at New School in particular, and they said, they're like, well, if we're not going to do training on Islamophobia, we're not going to do training on anti-Semitism. And the
you remind me of a colleague of mine who did his doctoral dissertation on empathy in families of children of survivors, and his doctoral committee demanded of him to add a special chapter on Palestinians. Otherwise, he wouldn't get his doctorate. So it exists everywhere. It's interesting that you call it the new normal. And I want to connect back to Nina, because we rudely interrupted. Yes, we did. You didn't even notice. You were going to speak about the Upper West Side, and I was going to speak about the Upper East Side. But at any rate, we have so many amazingly interesting strains of this conversation. We could have a webinar on each one of these. For example, the power of images. For example, the impulse to do something. For example, what doing something does for the doer. It's really helpful. And indeed, it does also for the community. We have raised so many crucial psychosocial issues that I couldn't ask for more thoughtful discussion. So let's just keep listening to each other. Before I say anything, let me just see, the East Side was fairly quiet, except, of course, for those occasions where a restaurant or a cafe were attacked, that were known to be run by Israelis or by Jews, were attacked and maybe lost their business too. And sort of created an occasion for people to go and demonstrate nearby. Or to buy more coffee.
May I say something?
Go ahead, and now it's yours.
Thank you. Just quickly, I would really love to hear more from people who are on the webinar. But I don't know if my son is still on. I noticed him in the scroll of people, and my sister, I don't know if she's still on. But I've told my children this many times. So if he's still on, he's heard it before. But to the other people out there who are wrestling with issues in their own communities, issues of discrimination, issues of ostracization. This might not be fully satisfying, but it is one of the only things in life that's in your control. And I tell my kids, and I told this to a couple of Harvard students who came up to me after the screening and was like, what do we do? And I said this to some NYU students who asked me the same thing. And I said, you control what you put out into the world. You don't control how it's received. So the choices you make, and I used to work for an organization called Facing History that had the most amazing tagline, which was individuals make choices, choices make history. And so you can choose to do a number of things, which I've done, you know, direct your charity toward organizations that share your values. And don't direct them toward ones that don't, you know, eat and rest, you know, we patronize Israeli restaurants. We, you know, we've traveled to Israel. We support people within our community and explicitly don't support people who don't reflect our values or who are openly hostile. I use the voting booth is another place. Now, maybe those things that I do will make not the tiniest ripple in the tiniest pond, but that is something I have absolute control over. And there is so little in life we have control over that I think that is something important to focus on. So, you know, when I did the postering and when I did what I did, there was no expectation of landing in a film. It was just, to me, sitting and doing nothing was not an option. So whatever your choices are in the world, you control them. And don't let other people tell you, don't let them, my son knows this, don't let other people define you and tell you who you are and what you stand for, because then you cede your, not only your agency and your autonomy, but your dignity to people who don't value any of that and seek to undermine and destroy your place in the world. Which is why I will never talk to anti-Semites. It's not my job to justify my existence. And I will never do that to people who undermine my dignity or worth. And so that's another thing. It's not only self-protective, but I think it speaks to our need to have respect for ourselves when other people are seeking to undermine that in the most grotesque and cruel ways. So I'll just shut up from there.
I also want to talk, like echo what Nina said, but also talk about the reception of the film, because Nina talked about, you know, you can't control what you put out in the world. And I think one of the things that I most...
No, you can control what you put out into the
can
world.
No, you can't control the reactions. You can't
Oh, the
control the reactions. Yeah. So what I will say is, yes, I couldn't control the reactions, but I'm very proud that the film is, I don't know if the word is embraced, but is being covered by different media outlets on the political spectrum. So from New York Post all the way to MSNBC and CNN. And you know, when the film itself has excerpts from Al Jazeera and from Fox News and every news station in the middle. And what I hoped is that I would be able to bring some sort of a dialogue. Like there was one time when I couldn't attend the Q&A when the film was in New York screening, and the usher told me that the audience just stayed and talked within themselves, which was amazing for me to hear. And I wish I was a fly on the wall when that happened. So with the film being covered in different, I would say, political channels, that is also what drives me. Like, for example, I got an invitation half a year ago to show the film to an audience who had Itamar Ben-Gvir, Israel's extremely right-wing, fascist, homophobic interior security or police minister. And he's also racist, I forgot to say. And I thought, should I go with the film or not? And I told I have to go, because if I'm talking about dialogue, and if I'm talking about, you know, dialogue is not just like the Jews and the other side, but also within us. Exactly. And it was one of the hardest conversations. I didn't have Nina with me or Julia with me. I went by myself, and you know, I had a discussion with them, and they were angry at some of the things that were said in the film. And you know, it was me, and you know, whenever I was in the Q&A and someone said something against the film, they all clapped. Like they all were like echoing the statement that the film in that specific scene they disagreed with. And you know, I have a few screenings lined up in the next following weeks, not all of them are available for the public like this one, but some of them, you know, some people will say, why are you showing this film in this space or that space? And of course, like that's what I want. Like I eagerly wait the Q&As, and that's I think why Nina also says, like, if you watch the film, please share with us your thoughts, because we are thirsty and hungry to hear what the film evoked in you. People sometimes talk about what they have felt in the past 2 years, and sometimes they talk about a scene that they are angry or triggered by, and sometimes they talk about why that is lacking and didn't exist in the film, and sometimes they appreciate, like, so many people come up to me and say that they love Nina's response to where she reads the comments and then reacts, not from her, of course, also from her brain, but from her heart. So people really appreciate that scene, and I've heard it once and once again, like that people were able to see themselves in several scenes that they didn't think that they would. And I think that the film, you know, you build something on the editing timeline or the assembly, and you don't know how it will activate people. But I'm very proud that it, you know, I hear laughter sometimes because there are 2 or 3 moments that I put on purpose so people will laugh. But I see sometimes people lean forward and are shocked from what is happening or shake their heads. You know, you asked me about reactions. Like, there was a woman that lives in North Manhattan, and she's not Jewish, and she said that she didn't know tearing down the posters was a thing. She thought they were all washed away from the rain or bleached from the sun, or people put stuff up on them. I have a friend who's an American Palestinian. He's a pen pal. I only talk to him on social media, and the film connected me to him, or him to me. And sometimes, you know, because he's not within the Jewish American community, he doesn't have a way to understand what we're going through, and vice versa. So he talks to me about, is this really true? Like, how you guys are feeling? And I've had a reaction from, you know, sometimes people come up to me and tell me they were assaulted from putting up a poster, and I am shocked that this wasn't reported on, because there were several incidents that were reported, but I heard countless incidents that I didn't know of when I made the film, of physical violence that happened. I do want to talk about a reaction that is not in the film, because I only heard it very long after I finished it, but someone who tore down a poster he's from India, and he was filmed by an Israeli. When he was filmed, the person told him, the Indian told the Israeli, both living in New York, go back to your country, even though they are both live in America and they're both immigrants. And that person was then doxxed and fired from his job. After some soul searching,
Oh, yeah.
You heard about this story?
Yeah, go ahead.
After some soul searching, he tried to connect with rabbis, and one rabbi took him in, invited him to her study, and she gave him a bunch of books to read and movies to watch about Israel and Palestine. Not all of them are, you know, labeled Zionist books, right? They are from all over the spectrum. And they had hard conversations. And when Yom Kippur of that year came, he wrote an apology for the Jewish community for ripping down the posters, and she read it in Temple Emmanuel. He also put up some posters himself, and he volunteered. So when I showed this film in Yeshiva University, and it was one of the first times I screened the film, people asked me, why are people ripping down the posters? And I think the obvious answer is that the death toll is rising and the war continues. That's why they're ripping down the posters. But who are the people that are ripping down the posters? That's a different conversation. And there's a spectrum. Like on one side, there are college students that for them, it's like that's their activism. And on the other side, there are anti-Semites. And I think there's a lot of people on that spectrum that, want to do something to stop the killing. And I think that by erasing the Jewish and Israeli grief, by the way, there were hostages from over 40 countries, Hindus and Buddhists and Christians and Muslims and Jews. It's not just a Jewish crisis, but by erasing our pain from the streets, that's their way of stopping what's happening, or at least if they will erase the grief or remove the Israeli propaganda, they will help defund the ammunitions to Israel. Again, that's what they are saying, right? But I'm saying, like, I cannot define. There were hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of people that ripped down the posters. And in the film, as you watch the film, I have 3 or 4 collages of them, and each one is giving a different response. And then I'm bringing 3 different people that ripped down the posters that did not talk to me, but talk to the camera in a lengthier manner. And that's the closest I could get to their POV, because they didn't want to connect with me face to face or to be in front of my camera. But I'm saying, like, I can't label all of them on, like, this is why they're doing it, right? But what I did try to show in the film is that the people that tore down the posters are from all walks of life, right? They are lawyers and public attorneys. They are bodega workers or owners, and they are from every ethnic background, from every age group. And I thought that is, Julia said it's the new normal. I think that is what maybe was shocking the most, to see that it's coming from literally everywhere.
And a few times in the film, they are asked, why do you tear it? Okay, so there is an attempt in the film to explore the meaning of tearing for them, not because we spoke about the meaning of putting it up, but the meaning of tearing.
Can I add something?
Which is very important psychologically as well, because one has many choices. If there's an image, one can put another image next to it to say, we suffer, they suffer, we suffer, right? There are many other options to do than to simply take it down.
Can I share something?
Please, I'm very curious in you're thinking about that, Nina.
Well, I'm not sure I'm going to respond to that directly, but 2 things. One is, there was a time when the film was screened in someone's home, and I said, I can't watch it again. It's too ugly, and there's too much ugliness, and it's too painful. So I decided to listen, just to be in an adjacent room and just listen. And it was fascinating to just hear the film, because the sounds from the film are very powerful. It's the sound of what people are saying, it's the anger, it's the comments that we as interviewees are offering. And for anyone who's seen the film and wants to see it again, try listening to, just without looking at it, listen to the sound, and you realize that cacophony, that noise, that people sort of shouting past one another, is so tragically emblematic of where we are. And the diversity of people, as Nim pointed out, tearing down posters was so devastating. It felt like the entire universe was just weighing in on this. But I don't want the session to end before I say something about Nim. In a very, very dark time, and I have my older sister to thank for this. She's the one who called me when I was trying to do my Shabbat, no social media, no phones on a Saturday. She's the one who called me and said, Israel's at war. So she destroyed my Shabbat tranquility. I still love her, but and by, as I said,
she didn't do it. That's the message. She was the messenger. Yes.
Right. By a strange circumstance, Nim found me. By the way, just a little scary. He called me and I thought, who is this guy? But anyway, I wound up trusting him. In a dark, dark tunnel of grief and anger and fear and all kinds of terrible things, he is such a light as a human being. And I cannot tell you how much that means, is to find the light in the darkness, and to find it in a person is the greatest gift of all. And I know he finds me hugely annoying, and he's, told me at times I say the wrong thing, but when you find someone who's so, I'm not gonna use the word authentic, I hate it, but who's so honest and true about who he is and what he stands for and how he embodies all the complexity and humanity we wish everyone else embodied, is such a wonderful thing. And I like it. So to people, again, I don't know who's on and where people are all from, but find your people, if you can, if you're as fortunate as I was to find Nim, and to just, it's been, it sounds weird to say, an enriching experience, given what the film is about, but hugely so. And I think he deserves so much credit for taking his confusion and his pain and his disorientation and turning it into something that the rest of us can wrestle with forever. So thank you, Nim.
Thank you. I'm blushing over here. I will say that the silver lining is really connecting with also Nina. By the way, when Nina says the wrong thing, I just leave it out of the cutting room, on the cutting room floor. But as
I would
the
love
other
to see,
interview,
I say to all my filmmakers friends, what I really want to see is what is on the cutting room.
No, that's 40 hours of people talking. I also left things that other interviews said on the cutting room floor. But I will say that what Nina is saying, after blushing for a second, I will say that that's the silver lining of finding new people. I think that understand you or see your pain. And I will say something that is very, again, this talk is for everyone all over the world. So I can only talk about two identities that I share, but I think people from other walks of life can find this as well. There is something about being Jewish, which I am, and something about being gay, which I am. And when I meet people that are from those minorities, they know what I'm going through. And there is some sort of a shared camaraderie and some sort of like all for one and one for all. Of course, we fight a lot within each other, both in the gay community and in the Jewish community. But the fight for the hostages in the Israel civic society, with majority of Israelis saying, we don't want the continuation of the war for months already. And we prioritize hostages above everything else. These are people that they've never met. And again, the hostages are from all walks of life in Israeli society. And as I said, it's also Bedouins and Druze and Christians and
just today we buried a Bedouin.
Yeah. And this fight for their release, just because they were in the wrong place at the wrong time, it's something that you know, so I think that the networking that happened post October 7, and I think also Julia can talk about it, because it's kind of like forming new bonds and unfortunately disconnecting from previous bonds.
Yeah, I can share a little bit about that. I'm actually here right now. This film and the conflict set my life on a totally different trajectory than I thought it would be on. Well, for starters, I have basically no friends who are not Jewish or Israeli at this point. And I know most students and young people in New York. I don't know, it's very challenging, especially in the art scene, because on a political side, I prefer to be friends with artists who tend to be more, I guess, left-leaning in American politics, like people who aren't homophobic and racist, like those are just my preference of people. But coming from the colleges, it's very hard to find people like that who are also pro-Israel. So just because of that, I guess because of that dynamic, it's very hard to find people outside of the Jewish and Israeli community who you want to be around. I mean, I also, just by being in this film, I get to work with Dede and Nitzan at their studio. I know Yael and I met a few months ago at the film screening. Like, I've met so many amazing people who have really helped not only my career, but just my mental health progress. And I feel like I'm just being around adults all the time. I've matured a lot. But yeah, I also started working at Hillel International. So I run the Jewish community on the art campuses. So sorry, I'm getting, sorry, I got a call.
No, that's okay. We will continue to be in touch. I'm afraid, and you and Nim, please stay, but Nina needs to leave. So maybe, Nina, you want to leave your last word here with the audience, and we definitely want to continue collaborating. So
sure. I don't know. Last word feels like a lot of pressure.
just
I don't know. I think life,
say any last word for this moment. It's
well,
not
I think
last word for your whole life.
I think what I would say is that it is deeply distressing to see how quickly and how giddily rabid hatred can
Yes.
emerge and metastasize.
Yes.
And I don't know what to say about that. I do know that it is it's incredibly heartbreaking and infuriating, but less so for me. I'm a grown woman, I'm in my 60s, but for my children and their children, I feel a deep sense of agony about what world we've given them. And the only thing that makes me feel not okay about that, but like I can deal with that, is knowing what extraordinary human beings they are. The world may never appreciate them for who they are, but I did my job, and I despair for the parents who didn't do theirs. And so again, I come back to, I've done what I can do. I'll continue to do whatever little ounce of thing I can do. And I know that my fellow panelists will continue to, and there's some people on this call, but life has gone to a dark place. And when I say to myself that I'm glad my father didn't live to see this, that's the worst thing I could possibly say, because I miss him every day. And to feel that way is a terrible indictment of who we are as human beings and where we've led this world to. So I'm sorry to be a negative last set of words, but I'll leave it there. You open the door, Yael. I leave everyone else. Thank you so much. I apologize.
We love you for being with us, and we'll be in touch. Okay, wonderful. Nim, Judy asked if she can get your contact to invite you to show the film at Monroe's Jewish Federation So I saw you put several materials on the chat. Did you include? No, you're muted. Did you include your contact also, or
So
I
yeah,
can
on the
give it
chat.
to her?
So I put the film's website, and there's a contact me in that, so she can email me there, and we can take it from there.
Okay.
The film is free for everyone, but there is an option to donate to the trauma center. So thank you for everyone who donated, and we appreciate. We're happy that we are able through the film to give back kind of like the donations directly to the center. So
Thank you so much, dear. Thank you. Judy asked something else that brought tears into my eyes. And I would like I would like us to reflect on that, because she says, what do we do with the posters now? Bury them in ceremony?
So that's a good
I know,
question.
Judy, in Israel, in the big, no, how do you say it in English?
What's the word?
איפה שהחטופים נפגשים.
Hostage Square.
In Hostage Square, they now put returned, although on the pictures of those who returned.
I actually saw that also in the upper. I saw it on Broadway in 76. That people write home, but I will say that again, as someone who's advocating for, of course, for the hostages to return and for the ceasefire to hold, we have to receive the hostages back. The bodies of Omer and the other 18 hostages need to be returned. So if you have posters of them, please don't stop putting those up. It means a lot for me. You know, I've been with the film, I've been everywhere from Miami to Seattle. I'm going to Nebraska and Florida in the next few weeks, so everywhere. And every time I saw the posters, and for me, it's a feeling of being seen and that my grief is being seen. So if you can still put them up, even if it's in your own home, it means a lot also to the families. I know from Alana, who had her 8 family members kidnapped on October 7, that when the first kind of like group came back of her immediate cousins, Sharon and Danielle, they told her that they couldn't believe that people put up their posters on the other side of the world. So it means a lot also to the hostages. And we know even from today and yesterday, hostages that came back and, you know, for a glimpse watched Al Jazeera in the tunnels, they saw their face being held by a stranger, and it meant a lot to them. So a poster can go a long way. It's not just that. In terms of the hostages that came back, that's a good question, Judy. I know that
that's your next film.
Yeah, I know that some like there's the Jerusalem National Library of Israel that also holds the most ancient Muslim text and Jewish texts, and you know, it's not the National Jewish Library, it's the National Israel Library, so it holds a lot of ancient texts that were written in the land of Israel. They collect these posters. So if you find yourself in Jerusalem in the next weeks or months, maybe they will be happy to receive them. And you can also always give them to your local JCC because they might want to put them up, or your local synagogue. Yeah.
Names I don't forget, because I'm getting it on my WhatsApp instead of here. From France, Sabine Rybak is asking, is it possible to have the film with French subtitles to try to show it in France? You're muted.
Yes, we've shown it in France before, and I have French subtitles.
Oh, fantastic.
So yeah, please contact me. The
So
details are
I
on
will,
the
yeah, I
webpage.
will put you in touch. That's
Thank you.
wonderful. That's
Yeah,
wonderful.
but I've shown the film all over the world, so I have Spanish, French, and Hebrew subtitles as well.
Excellent. So
Yeah.
we can talk to our Spanish speakers as well.
Yes,
That's
yes.
excellent. That's wonderful. You see, Julia, we will make that part of the new normal, to think more and to try to stretch the muscles of our empathy. So
Yeah.
And also the muscle of our legs, because Julia's walking a lot.
well, she's young and beautiful.
Julia, how much are you walking? Yeah.
I don't have an Apple Watch or anything, but too much.
Okay.
Too much to be in work clothes.
Okay.
You look wonderful. So I hate to stop this. This is a conversation we could speak for the rest of the day, and probably maybe we should have it again in a few months, because I'm sure we would want to reflect.
Yeah, maybe we can do one with Alana and Dede and Nitzan once they're back from their once they're able.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. And perhaps even, we have a working group on Ukraine, a working group on Rwanda, a working group on
there is something
please.
There is something I wanted to talk earlier about. Shani said about kind of like the conception of the posters. And of course, like Dede and Nitzan had this crazy idea of having, a poster per kidnapped person, right? And 251 posters on a PDF. And, there were other initiatives on that day that theirs caught on. But we've seen it when 9/11 hit New York. We've seen people put up their loved ones on the walls. And I know in Latin America, people are looking for their disappeared loved ones with their posters. So it's kind of like when there's a necessity or a need, I think the lack of knowing what will happen next, even Alana and Liam, on October 8th, they put their posters of their cousins on a huge paper and they walked around with it in New York.
Perfect.
So, I'm thinking again, that's
why.
why.
Did Julia leave? Or
I'll contact her. I'll ask her what happened.
Okay,
I think this need.
Yeah.
Oh, she wrote, I have to head out, but she's thanking you and everyone.
Oh, what about her last word for the audience?
I'll ask her to text me her last words.
Please ask her.
Okay, but yeah, like I think again, it's this collective wish or collective understanding, and also collective urgency to do something that led to the creation of the posters, and also the collective need to download the posters and print them and put them up.
Absolutely. This is really amazing. So, where's Julia? Come on, she can't just walk without saying goodbye in a last word way.
I know. I texted
her phrase, the new normal, is extremely important. Many Holocaust survivors and their children, and many people in Israel, of the Jewish people, it's almost like we are used to being victims. So here's yet another time that we are being victimized. Or no. Even if we are participating in war and perhaps sometimes victimizing others, it doesn't mean that we are not victimized as well. So this is such an important conversation, actually, for everybody post-conflict. I guess Julia did the New York thing and just walked. So that we will take it in New York, usual normal.
Yes.
So, Neem, you justifiably have the last word for you, and you can elaborate on it as much as you want.
Sure. So I will say, first of all, that Julia just texted me. She's thanking everyone. and she's saying that honoring, sharing Omer's memory is the honor of her life. Yeah, so I know she's in touch with his family, and his family, I think, have been through so much because they thought he was maybe killed on October 7, and then they realized he was kidnapped.
Exactly.
And after a year of traveling the earth and meeting everyone, and speaking to presidents and prime ministers, they realized that he was killed or murdered on October 7. So they went through a different kind of hell with all of the hopes and despairs, and they deserve a closure as well. So Julia's talking about Omer a lot, and I will say that in terms of myself, I want to thank you, Doctor, for having the film and for having us in this afternoon. And I really hope the film will reach more spaces around the world.
You already have a commitment in Monroe, New York,
Yeah,
and in Paris. That's not bad. And I'm sure there are other ideas.
And for the community that is part of the center, the film is available in Estonia, Portugal, and Finland for streaming.
Not in Croatia, because
not yet. Those countries have licensed the film. So I'm saying outside of your link, like let's say they watch this webinar in a year, they can also stream it on their broadcasters.
Interesting.
Because the film is, maybe in a year it will be available everywhere, but for now, for the next 2 days, it's available through your link or the link I pasted in the chat. And the film, it's not a spoiler so much, but can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, it's not a spoiler so much. The film ends with this shared hope of we can share, there's enough street lamps and or lampposts and enough walls, unfortunately, for our grief. And this also, of course, talks about how between the river and the sea, there is enough space for two peoples, and the only way forward is coexistence. There's been enough bloodshed, and we've seen enough war, and we are hoping that this bloody war would be the last time that a blood is spilled on the land.
Amen. And I don't have enough thanks for you, Nim. And we are here to support you forever.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we will continue to advertise. And, the webinars are on our website, and people watch them. For bigger audience watches them. So there'll be more life to this discussion. And as I said before, this discussion and the film raised so many poignantly and pivotal questions that we have to think about more and more and more. So we will continue to talk.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you from the bottom of our hearts.
Thank you, and peace.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Shalom. Salam. Bye-bye.